Before we begin, I want to ask you a question. Where are you joining me from today? I'd love to know which cities, which quiet streets, or which busy neighborhoods are tuning into this memory. It's a story about the things we leave unsaid for years, and how a single afternoon can change the way we see the people we love most. Leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I truly enjoy reading about the different corners of the world where these stories land. I used to think that the walls of this house were silent. I've lived here for 32 years, and for the last decade, the silence has felt like a roommate, predictable, steady, and mostly unobtrusive. I'm Clara, and I'm at that age, somewhere in my late 50s, where you start to realize that your life is no longer a series of firsts, but a collection of remembers. The weekend began with a phone call that didn't feel like a catalyst. It was my son, Leo. He has a voice that always sounds like he's in a hurry, even when he's just saying hello. He told me he was driving through the state for a business conference and asked if he could crash in his old room for a couple of nights. "Just a quick pit stop, Mom," he said. "Don't go to any trouble." But mothers don't know how to not go to trouble. It's not in our DNA. I spent Friday morning dusting shelves that were already clean and buying the specific brand of sourdough he liked when he was 12, even though I had no idea if he still ate bread at all. When his car finally pulled into the gravel driveway, the sound of the tires crunching felt like a heartbeat returning to the house. Leo is 30 now. He's tall, taller than his father was, with a way of moving that suggests he's always calculating the shortest distance between 2 points. When he walked through the front door, he looked around the foyer as if he were checking a map to see if anything had shifted. He dropped his bag, a leather duffel, expensive and worn, by the coat rack. It looked out of place against the faded floral wallpaper. "House looks good, Mom," he said, giving me that one-armed squeeze that grown sons give their mothers when they're trying to be affectionate without being sentimental. "It's the same as it's always been," I replied, and at the time, I believed that was true. The first evening was a dance of the ordinary. We sat in the kitchen, the same room where he used to do his long division homework while I burnt the edges of grilled cheese sandwiches. The ceiling fan hummed its familiar, rhythmic click, a sound that has been the metronome of my life for decades. We talked about the things that don't matter, the rising cost of electricity, the new bypass they were building near the interstate, and his latest promotion. I watched him as he spoke. I saw the way he rubbed his thumb against his palm when he was thinking, a habit he'd had since he was a toddler. It's a strange thing, being the parent of an adult. You see the man, but you're constantly haunted by the ghost of the boy. I saw the toddler who cried when he dropped his ice cream. I saw the teenager who slammed the door because I wouldn't let him stay out past midnight. But as the night wore on, the air in the kitchen changed. The light from the porch filtered in, casting long, amber shadows across the table. Leo stopped talking about work. He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes tracking the steam as it rose. "Mom," he said softly. The shift in his tone made me go still. I was thinking about something on the drive up. I waited, my hand resting on the edge of the table. "What's that, Leo?" He didn't look up. "Were you happy?" "I mean, back then. When I was little. When Dad was still around and the house was loud and everything was the way it was." The question felt like a physical weight. It wasn't the kind of thing we discussed. Our family was built on the foundation of doing. We did the chores, we did the holidays, we did the milestones. We didn't do the feeling part out loud. My first instinct was the mother's instinct, to lie. To say, "Of course, honey." I had everything I wanted. We do that to protect them. We don't want our children to feel like their existence was a burden or that our happiness was a sacrifice made at their expense. But I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw that he wasn't asking for a platitude. He was asking for the truth because he was struggling with his own life, his own choices. He needed to know if the person who raised him was a whole human being or just a character in his story. I took a breath. The click of the ceiling fan felt louder. "Happy is a big word, Leo," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's a word that covers up a lot of other things." Was I happy? Sometimes. I was exhausted most of the time. I was worried about the mortgage, and I was worried about your grades, and I was worried that I was losing the girl I used to be before I became Mom. I saw his shoulders drop just a fraction. He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. I remember you used to sit on the back porch after I went to bed, he whispered. I could see the glow of your cigarette, back when you still smoked. You just sat there in the dark for hours. I used to wonder what you were looking at. I was looking at the silence, I told him. I was trying to remember my own name. Not the name on the utility bills, but the name of the girl who wanted to travel to Florence to study art. The girl who loved poetry before she started reading Dr. Seuss. We sat in that honesty for a long time. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was like a fever had finally broken. I told him about the years of making do, the small joys of a quiet morning, and the profound, terrifying responsibility of being someone's entire world. I told him that I didn't regret a single second of it, but that didn't mean it wasn't hard. It didn't mean I hadn't lost things along the way. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't fall asleep right away. I lay in the dark and thought about that girl in Florence, the one who never existed because life took a different turn. But I realized, with a clarity that only comes in the middle of the night, that she wasn't gone. She was just the foundation that the rest of me was built on. The next morning, the sun arrived with a renewed brightness. I woke up before the alarm, the house feeling different, lighter, perhaps. I walked down the hall, the floorboards groaning under my feet like old friends. I started the coffee, and the aroma seemed to fill the cracks in the walls, when Leo stumbled into the kitchen, his hair messy and his eyes bleary. He didn't look like the high-powered executive he tried to be. He looked like the boy who used to ask for extra chocolate chips in his pancakes. Morning, he grumbled, reaching for a mug. Morning, I said. Sleep okay? Better than I have in months, he admitted. He leaned against the counter, watching me move. Thanks for last night, Mom. For being real with me. I think I've been feeling a lot of pressure lately to have it all figured out. To be happy all the time. Seeing you, hearing that you struggled too, it makes me feel like I'm not failing. I'm just living. I reached out and patted his arm. That's all any of us are doing, Leo. We're just navigating the fog and hoping we hit the shore eventually. We decided to spend the day doing nothing of consequence. We walked down to the old park, the one with the swings that still creaked in the wind. We passed the house with the overgrown ivy, the one we used to call the Dragon's Den when he was 5. The town had changed, new shops with glass fronts, younger faces on the sidewalks, but the bones of the place remained. As we walked, Leo told me things he hadn't mentioned in his weekly 5-minute phone calls. He talked about a girl he'd been seeing, a woman named Maya who liked jazz and hated the city. He talked about his fear that he was turning into his father, quiet, stoic, and sometimes unreachable. You have his hands, I told him as we sat on a bench overlooking the pond. And you have his heart. But you have your own voice, Leo. You don't have to be silent if you don't want to be. He looked at the water, watching a pair of ducks drift aimlessly. I always thought that being a man meant being the rock. The one who doesn't move. But watching you, I realized the rock still gets weathered. It still feels the rain. Later that afternoon, we retreated to the house as a light drizzle began to fall. The sound of rain on the tin roof of the porch was a lullaby we both knew by heart. Do you still have the archives? Leo asked suddenly. The archives was his name for the 3 large plastic bins I kept in the top of the linen closet. They were filled with the debris of his childhood. I dragged them out, and we sat on the living room floor, surrounded by ghosts of the past. There were finger paintings that were supposed to be horses, but looked like colorful clouds. There were report cards with teachers' notes saying, Leo is a bright boy but talks too much in class. We found a ticket stub from the first movie we ever saw together, a cartoon about a lost dog. Leo picked up a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was a note I'd written to him when he was 10, tucked into his lunchbox on a day he was nervous about a soccer game. It said, regardless of the score, you are the bravest person I know. Love, Mom. He held that paper for a long time. His fingers traced the faded ink. I remember this, he said, his voice thick. I kept it in my pocket all day. I think I even took it to the field with me. I felt like as long as I had this, I couldn't really lose. I looked at my son, and I saw the bridge between the past and the present. All those years I spent worrying if I was doing enough, if I was being enough, if my own quiet unhappiness at times was polluting his world, and here he was, holding a scrap of paper that proved all he ever saw was the love. We spend so much time looking at the mistakes, I said softly. We forget to look at the light we managed to keep burning. As the evening turned into night, we didn't turn on the TV. We didn't check our phones. We just sat there, the bins of memories open between us. We talked about the future, not the one on the calendar, but the one in our heads. I told him I wanted to take an art class. Not to be a professional, just to see if I still remembered how to hold a brush. He told me he wanted to move closer to the mountains, to a place where he could breathe. It was a weekend of permission. I gave him permission to be vulnerable, and he gave me permission to be more than just his mother. Sunday morning came with the inevitable weight of departure. The suitcase was zipped, the car keys were on the counter. The air in the house felt heavy again, but it was a different kind of weight, the weight of a full heart rather than an empty room. We stood by his car in the driveway. The sun was burning off the morning mist, and the world felt scrubbed clean. "I'll call you more," he promised, and for the first time, I believed him. Not because he felt he had to, but because he wanted to. "I know you will," I said. "And Leo? Don't forget to look at the silence every once in a while. It's not as scary as it looks." He hugged me then, a real hug, both arms, holding on for a second longer than usual. "I love you, Mom. Thanks for the sourdough." I watched his car disappear down the road, the red taillights fading into the distance. I stood on the porch for a long time, even after the sound of the engine had died away. The house was quiet again, but the silence didn't feel like a roommate anymore. It felt like a canvas. I went back inside. I didn't immediately start cleaning up the breakfast dishes or folding the guest towels. Instead, I went to the linen closet and took out a small, leather-bound notebook I'd bought years ago and never used. I sat at the kitchen table, under the clicking ceiling fan, and I wrote. I wrote about the girl in Florence. I wrote about the sourdough and the ticket stubs. I wrote about the question that changed everything. I realized that we spend our lives building walls to protect our children, only to find that the greatest gift we can give them is to show them the cracks in those walls. That's where the light gets in. That's where the connection happens. My life hasn't changed in the ways the world measures. I still live in the same house. I still drink my coffee in mismatched mugs, and I still have more years behind me than in front of me. But inside, the landscape has shifted. I am no longer just a keeper of memories. I am a participant in them. Happiness, I've decided, isn't a destination. It's not a box you check or a goal you reach. It's the honesty you share with the people who matter. It's the courage to be seen, even when you're not sure what people will see. As I sit here today, looking out at the willow tree in the backyard, I can finally answer Leo's question with total honesty. Was I happy back then? I was becoming. And I'm still becoming now. And that is more than enough. Thank you for staying with me through this memory. It's funny how the smallest moments, a simple question over a cup of coffee, can be the ones that stay with us the longest. It reminds us that we are never truly finished growing, no matter how many years we've seen. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had a conversation that changed the way you saw your parents or your children? Is there a question you've been waiting to ask, or one you're glad you finally answered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and your stories mean a lot to me. If this story touched you, please give the video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And don't forget to subscribe so we can continue sharing these moments together. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember that even the quietest houses have the most beautiful stories to tell. I'll see you in the next one.